All right, listeners, we are on season 2 of Life is Better with You in It. And I have another dear one on the podcast this time around. And I think if you saw her on first season, go back and look. But we have to bring her on again because we keep talking about this word with. And so with me today is Dr. Ryann Cruz. And so Ryann, welcome.
Hey, thank you. I'm super excited to be back.
Oh, good. And so, listeners, I want you to hear from my coach, my personal development coach. She's been helping me navigate business for 2 years. Her and I got together from a previous company. And so she's just been stuck with me ever since. And so, Ryann, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and how you got into this word called coaching.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because it's not something I ever set out to do specifically. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what coaching is and what coaching does, especially when you throw around life coach. I think there's an interesting stigma
Yes.
about what it is. Yeah, and it never was anything that I really thought I was going to explore, probably because of that stigma. But I started my career thinking I was going to be a clinical psychologist. And so that's
Mm.
probably where this got sparked. Yeah, my undergrad is in psychology. I thought that I would go to grad school for clinical. And then I took a hard left my senior year of college and started to explore IO psychology. So it's business psychology, right?
Yeah.
And that's how people are motivated. That's how you get productivity from people, performance management, learning. All of those things are founded in IO, and IO stands for industrial and organizational. And so that's how I got started. Specifically around student motivation was what got me into it. And once I
Mm.
started learning about human behavior and like what motivates people and gets you out of bed, I'm a pretty ambitious person. And I was like, this is helping me understand myself. And so probably a little bit of an ego-driven decision, like let's figure out, how I can be my best self. This is,
Yeah.
again, teaching me about myself, right? And so went to grad school, started with my master's degree, learned a lot about business in that process. With it being an IO program, you learn a ton about industry and the connection between people and results. And I started to get really passionate about that and really understanding, people spend so much of their life at work. Shouldn't it
Yeah.
be a good experience? Shouldn't that be something fulfilling for you? And can't companies play a bigger hand in making that real? And so that started to really become my passion. I did not stop going to school until the end of 2022. So I just kept pushing through. I think it ended up being 14 years in college by the time it was all said and done. Yeah,
Wild.
really super long time. Got my PhD. My dissertation was on succession planning. And succession planning is, how do you develop the next leader that's coming up? And so leadership development started to become a passion project of mine, especially around women in leadership. And so as I continued to research and write and explore this idea of how women lead, that is what eventually led me into wanting to do coaching, and specifically with, female entrepreneurs. And so I learned so much about the unique value of women, and the unique value that they bring to leadership positions, and the ways in which everyone can be more successful when women step into their power. And I really wanted to be able to help. And I knew academically, that's a really small audience, right?
Yeah,
I
very small.
myself and my mom are the two people that have read my dissertation, right? Like no one, no one else
I
is
will read
gonna.
it.
If you want to, the abstract is only one page, and that might
Yeah,
be a better fit for people.
right.
You can read the first page and the last page, and you'll get what you need out of it for
Okay,
sure.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, much shorter. So coaching just seemed like, hey, that's more accessible, right?
Yeah.
I can actually reach women. I can actually share what I've learned and help facilitate their own understanding of themselves and them stepping into their power. And so it really started with wanting to help. It really started with wanting to reach more people and make a bigger impact. And so during COVID, the organization we were with, I stepped away from because it was COVID and things were not happening anymore. And so I had to take a step back away from what I was doing, kind of retreat within myself, be back with family. And in that time away is when I got my coaching certification. And
That's
so
awesome.
I met a
I
great
even
group
know
of
you
people.
were certified.
Yeah,
Spoiler.
you're welcome. Yeah, no, I didn't make it up, which is good news, right?
I love
For
that.
you.
It's
It
been
has
very
been based.
helpful.
I'll let my master coach know that we've been so helpful with you.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
yeah, it was a seven week program. And so, or maybe 9 week, man, it's been a while. But we worked through all of these foundations of really exploring your thoughts and your feelings in a way where like I'm not directing that conversation, right? I'm
Yes.
holding space for it. And it's really about the person on the other end of that conversation driving it. So, like, for example, when you came to me, you have things you want to talk about,
Yeah.
but you don't have clarity. You don't have actionable steps that come from it. And so I have the skill set, and what I've learned in my education and in my training is how to create space and structure for you to explore the things you're interested in and then have some actionable steps on the other side of that conversation. And so
Mhm.
every time that we connect, you should be leaving it with some value, and feeling like you've moved through some thoughts and have some really good outcomes waiting for you on the other side. But it's really driven by the client. And so that helps me understand really what coaching was, and to understand that the stigma that exists around it is a little unfounded, right? I'm sure that there's a
Mhm.
handful of people that kind of ruin it for the bunch, right?
Yes.
But
Yes,
for the
absolutely.
most part, that's all it is. It's just structure. It's a structured conversation. And I think if you're willing to hold space for other people and you really care about the success of other people, I think you can be a really phenomenal coach. And so that's what I've been up to for the last couple of years, in addition to all the other fun stuff.
So when you take on clients, right? So like we'll use me as like exhibit A of like how we coach. And every time I come to one of our sessions, I've got a list, right? Shit thing is a mile long about the things that I want to talk about, or like, here's what happened, here's what's going on. And a lot of times, sometimes I just need you to be like with me. And so, how would you be able to tell a good coach from a bad coach? And not like good and bad as like, like negative, but like, how would someone be able to tell if they're getting coached by someone in a positive way and like can walk with them well?
Yeah, that's great. I think it's really specific to who you are.
Okay.
Um, I've told people this in a lot of formats, and I stand by it to this day. I believe all relationships are inherently kind of the same, whether it's your work relationship, a romantic relationship, a friendship, your therapist, your coach. I think there is a basic foundation for like what needs to exist in all relationships. And the same way that you would know, like, if you were in a job and you were like, man, I don't like my boss, that relationship's not good. Or you have a friendship that's starting to like wear out and you're not on the same page. Or if you're in a relationship and you're at the end of the road, those same signs that you get that you're not a fit anymore is, I think, the same way you would know if like a coach or a therapist
Mm,
wasn't the right fit for you. And so just the same way, like you explore new relationships all the time. I think when you meet someone that you think might be your coach, is this a sustainable relationship, right? Is this someone that you connect with, that it's easy to talk to, that you feel like you can be open and honest, vulnerable,
mhm,
authentic? Can you show up as your full self? And do you want to? And I think
mm,
if you have that, you build rapport and that person can be a great coach for you. And because everybody has different expectations, your coach doesn't need to be the same person, right? People need different things out of a relationship. And so you have to find your fit. But I think you have to pay attention to how you feel about it. You have to really connect with the other person and want to be vulnerable and open and authentic for it to work.
So say if someone was interested in exploring like this dynamic of having a coach, right? Like for me, the reason why I pursued working with you as a coach is because I knew that you were multiple, if not like millions of steps ahead of me, just in like the career journey and life. And so I felt like you were a wise, wise soul. And I'm like, I think I need some direction from her to get more clarity because I wanted, right, in this business, I feel alone sometimes, right? And like in the way that I'm building and the way that I'm growing, right? We're growing the team and you're helping me navigate that too. But you do this like amazing job of being with me. And so how would how would someone know, like, I think I'm ready for a coach, and like, how do you help somebody who might be a prospective client figure out what it is that they might need and be like, oh, yep, I can provide you with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're even thinking I might be ready for a coach, you're probably ready for a coach.
Okay. Like
The
to get
the
other
people,
perspective. Mm.
yeah, if you want it, that's probably the number one indicator that it's the right step for you. The people that I have struggled with the most, and a lot of times this has been internally, right? This has been I work for a corporation, and coaching conversations are part of my responsibilities. People that are not ready for a coach don't want to coach. And it's really that simple. When we say someone's not coachable, it's because they're not open.
Mm.
That's really all that means. You're not really open to exploring. You're not really open to other perspective. And so if you're thinking like, I don't want a coach, or that's silly, or why would I need one? They're probably not going to be great conversations. I think there are some coaches out there that are phenomenal with what we call breakthrough coaching. And that's an awesome skill set. I think that's a very seasoned, experienced, specific kind of coach that can really pull you out of yourself. And that's really cool. And so if someone's telling you you need a coach, I'd go find a coach like that.
Yeah.
But if you're exploring it on your own and you're thinking like, I wonder what this is like, or this might be something that's useful for me, you are already a great candidate for it, because your openness is what is the indicator of you being successful with a coach and it working out. So I would say that's the biggest piece of it, is just really wanting it. If you're new to it, I always like to start with super exploratory conversation. And so my number one question is like, what do you want to work on?
Mm.
And it's such an open-ended question, but a million things come out of people, and you just listen, right? People can talk about that for 30 minutes straight without taking a breath, right? If you say, what do you want to work on? Like,
Mhm.
wow, it's like that feels like endless possibilities. I can talk about anything. It could be anything. And so I think once people start to let those words come out of them, and I'm a big note taker. You always know I'm always like
Mhm.
writing
Mhm.
down
You'll
things to
you'll
make
say,
sure.
you mentioned this 3 times, and I'm like, did I? Did I?
Yeah, like I act as a mirror, right? And so it's the
Mhm.
same thing in those early conversations, as I act as a mirror. So if you're really curious about whether or not it's going to work, hey, get all those words out of you. I'm going to reflect that back at you. And if you're like, wow, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to figure out. That's what I want to explore. Then that's where we go, right? The client really leads me, as much as, I lead them.
So for me, having a coach is super beneficial because I feel like I have somebody with me in the business. And you have gotten multiple texts or phone calls to where I go, Ryann, I totally fucked up today. Here's what happened. Talk me back. Talk me back. Like
Or
I
am I
need,
crazy?
like, am I crazy, or like, holy, of like whatever it is that's happened over the past couple years. But I really feel like it's been beneficial in helping me kind of like look at it from like a different side, and then be able to move forward and be successful in the business. And so like I definitely credit you with like a lot of just me being able to continue to have the confidence in myself to continue to do this, because being a business owner is scary as shit. Like it just is. I think that there are some days where I'm like, wow, I don't know my next step. And then I go, Ryann, I'm unwell. So what do you feel like is beneficial to having a coach? Like I think for me, the benefit is having somebody with me and feeling like I have a partner. So what do you feel like is beneficial, and like what do you think someone would get? Like what's the benefit of having a coach?
Yeah, there's so many. I think that's a huge one.
Mhm.
And thank you for saying all of that. I think there's a lot of intangibles that it's hard to put your finger on.
Yeah.
Um, but we've poured into your business and we've set goals together, and you have overachieved all of those goals because you're willing to put the work in. And part of putting the work in is having a coach and staying focused. Um, it's a discipline, it's a focus that you can't always do alone. I think it's really challenging when you have a big, full, beautiful life to stay really focused and really disciplined, about things when it gets hard,
Yeah.
because it's going to get hard. And having a partner through that is huge. But the intangibles of a coach, right? Like you might not see it on the receiving end, but there's so much being put into those conversations to accelerate you as a client, right? We are going to figure out what are you the most passionate about? How do we capitalize on that? What do you want to achieve out of that? And then how do we stay on track and chase it? And even though our conversations structurally probably don't feel like that, when we start to zoom out, you can see how we've actually put those building blocks in place to really accelerate your growth, accelerate your thinking, go after the things that matter to you. And you can set any goal you want in life, and you can probably try to move towards it. But the way that you feel and the success that you feel when it's really authentic to you and
Yeah.
it's what you're passionate about, it feels different. That success is not the same as just chasing any random goal. And I think that's where I really am passionate about entrepreneurs, because you can make up the goal for yourself, right? You're not chasing a goal
Yep.
someone else set for you. And so let's uncover that passion and that purpose, and we'll go chase it together, and we're going to stay on it. That's something that's really, really, really hard to do in a vacuum. You
Yep.
have to have a support system, and a coach is one of those people that acts as a support system. Outside of business, I'm a holistic coach. And so it's not always going to be about the business. We're always going to consider the other things that affect you as a human. You
Yep.
have kids, you're married, you care about the church, you care about your community, you care about your own wellness and your health, you care about your hobbies and your friendships, you care about your financial well-being. And so there's all these other things that are going to influence who you are, and we're going to address all of them. And I think that's also really important to note in coaching, is that it's not just about the goal. It's how do all of these things feed into who you are, and how do we make sure that you're tending to them the way that you need to. It's
Yep.
really, really easy, especially I think as women, to burn out. Um, and it's because we're not filling our cup. And so having that person that can say like, hey, I'm going to check you on this, we're going to have a check-in. One of my big exercises that I talk to people all the time is the wheel of life. You and I know that we do those
Always.
check-ins,
Yeah.
we come back to it, right? And so we
Yeah.
have we have tools in our toolbox to check in on you. We have tools that you've learned. And I'm sure there's a lot of things we've talked about that like you've learned that you could go do now. They live in your head
Yeah.
forever. That
My one is what is this telling me right now? Instead of getting upset, what is this telling me? And I always feel like it's like Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder, and I'm like, Ryan, here's what this
I
is
love
telling
that
me.
one. It's good, right? There's
It is.
tools,
It
and
is.
yeah, and I've jokingly said to you like one day you'll outgrow me and you'll need someone way more skilled than me. Because you're gonna absorb the things that we talk about, and
Yeah.
they're gonna live in you. Those tools become part of who you are and how you move, and they're gonna always make you better. And at some point, my hope for you is that you outpace me and you need someone way smarter and experienced and better than me to continue to help driving your success. And that's really the point of coaching, is that you're learning how to do these things, with or without me. And
Yep.
if you want to walk with me, we can do that. And I'll continue to always push to learn new techniques, new skills, new tools to help my clients along. Um, but it's also to make you better, and you more equipped to handle these things as you move through your own journey as well. And so the way that I can be with you isn't always one-on-one like this, right? Like I'm
Mm-mm.
also that thing on your shoulder talking to you about your feelings, even when I'm not physically there. And so that's how I kind of impart, my fingerprint on your experience.
Yeah, and I think too, I think sometimes what people miss about this coaching piece is that there's a huge level of accountability. So like this does not work if I don't put in the work. And so what I've learned through our sessions is that like you just never give me the damn answer. Like I always gotta like sometimes I'm like, can you throw me a bone here? Like tell me because I'm dying out here. I don't know what you're wanting from this conversation. But I think knowing that like you've got to put the work in it, and like you've got to be able to do it outside of the phone call, right? Because like we can have a great conversation and we can talk about pushing something forward. And you and I like did this whole goal setting session for the year. about like what I wanted to do with the business, with home, with personal, right? Like that holistic thing. We talked about everything, all the things that I want to do. And you're like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do all of them. Like, yes, we are, Ryan. Yes, we are. And so like I have to put in that work and be held accountable like on my own for that. And so for you, like as my coach, like are there is there like one tip that you would tell somebody, right? So like we're kind of nearing the end of this conversation about like this coaching and the holistic side of things and like putting in the work. So like is there like a tidbit? Is there like something, an exercise that someone can do if they haven't got a coach yet, but they're curious about getting one that may lead them into like a here's something that I want you to explore, right? Because you always ask me all these questions to pose us from a certain lens. So like imagine you were talking to like a potential entrepreneur client. What would you tell them to get them to start exploring one thing about their life?
Yeah, I think if I could say one thing, um, I would say, go download my Wheel of Life, because I
Mm,
could say that it's the question of like, hey, what do you want to explore? I feel like if you're just approaching it, there's a lot of ways that people can think about that that's not going to lead them to maybe wanting to pursue this or really understanding what they'd pursue. It might be a little too wide open for people. I
yeah,
think anything visual is something that's going to resonate with more people quicker. And
yeah.
so I have it as a downloadable. I have a few tools for people like really, really early in their journey or just wanting to explore that they can download and do the exercise. There's instructions on how to do it. But for me, it really
We'll
is the
put it in
Wheel
the
of
link,
Life.
listeners.
Yeah, we will. And I think it's easy, right? Um, and you can even like listen, frankly, you could Google it and you could draw it yourself on a piece of scrap paper, right? But it gives you a visual of where you might not be putting enough of yourself into the things that matter and putting too much of yourself into the things that don't matter. And it can be hard to articulate what that is. I think it's
Yeah.
something that, especially as women, I think we feel it, but it can really be hard to like put your finger on and go, that's the thing that's not right. That's the thing that feels wrong for me or feels off
Mm,
for me. And I think being able to articulate it, giving a visual is really, really helpful. And so in the Wheel of Life, that one exercise, that one tidbit, you really have to think about what are all of the things that matter to you, and you have to put a word to it. And then you have to be really honest with yourself of how much you want to be putting of yourself into each category, and then how much you're actually putting of yourself into each category. And you have to look at how different it is. Your ideal state and your current state, you have to sit with that information and look at that information. I think at that point, you then have to decide, what am I going to do with that information?
yeah.
And so that's, I think, a much more productive way of figuring out what coaching would do for you, is really looking at that difference in a way that is obvious and in a way that is helpful and gives you some directionality. Because I
Some
think
like
I could
next step afterwards.
Yep. Yeah. Because think
Mhm.
about it. If you put finance on your Wheel of Life as one of your, 8 or 12 categories, depending on how many you want to put on there, and you want rich financial health, that's important to you, that stability really matters to you, and say that you want that to be in a really, really good place. And then you have to be really honest with yourself and kind of fill in on this wheel. How much effort are you actually putting into this? Where is your financial health today
Sure.
compared to where you want it to be? You have
Hmm.
to get, you have to, it's a coloring exercise. It's a little fun, right? But you
Right, right.
color it in, you have your line of where you want it to be, and you kind of color it in with where you are to that goal. And then you have to sit with that distance. And we'll get a little psych crazy here because I'll nerd
Okay.
out a little bit, but like
We
that
love that.
distance between who you are and who you want to be, it creates what's called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance happens all the time for people, and it's super uncomfortable. We don't like it. It's a feeling that like can give us anxiety, it can make us upset, it can make us mad. And those emotions are things that we then try to push down because we don't like it, right? And so a lot of times that's what prevents us from meeting our goals, is we get that dissonance, we're like, that sucks. I don't want to
Yeah.
feel that feeling. Let's go put that somewhere else. And what coaching will do instead is we're like, no, no, no. we're going to put that feeling on the table and we're going to figure out how to resolve that feeling in a really healthy way. And it's different from therapy, right? Because we're not talking about dysfunction, right? Therapy is great for dysfunction. If something is really wrong and you need support for something dysfunctional, please go to a therapist. They are the right person to help with that. This is normal human feelings that we all feel all day long, every single one of us. There's nothing dysfunctional about cognitive dissonance. It's absolutely normal, but we don't all have the tools and the resources to address it in a way that's healthy. And so what we do is we put that on the table and we talk about it until it's resolved, until we have a plan, until you see that movement and you feel comfortable with going, yes, I'm here, I want to be here, and I have a plan. And now you've worked through that dissonance.
Truth bomb. Truth bomb. All right. Sometimes we're uncomfortable with even the normal feelings. Shocker.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listeners, you've heard it first from Ryann just about getting like a little wheel of life. So we're gonna put that in the downloads here. I'll share the link if you think you might be interested in some coaching with Ryann. I'm about 2.5 years in, and I just don't plan on quitting for now. And so we think that you need to find somebody to be with you. And so I've been fortunate enough to find someone who walks with me through business. And I think that it helps take me to the next level. What level that is, I don't know. We kind of work through that and figure that out together. But I think there's always room for us to learn how to be with others and to learn how to be with ourselves. And so life is better with you in it. And have a wonderful rest of your day.